Joining us now, Dawn McVea. She is the director for Mississippi and Louisiana of the National Federation of Independent Small Business. Dawn, thanks for coming in the studio today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
First time, right?
First time in the studio.
In the studio.
Yeah, COVID hit, and nobody was seeing anyone, and now things are just finally feeling normal again.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's nice.
Glad to have you. All right, so we've just been talking about all sorts of economic issues in this country, and that's got to be creating all sorts of headwinds for your members, the small business community.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It really is. You know, we have our most recent survey out. We've talked many times on the show about our optimism survey, and we've been doing it for 48 years. And out today is, another decrease in optimism. Also, just a real feeling that things are not going to improve in the coming three months or so is generally what we ask them to look out and say, how do you feel about things? Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, the world seems to be a little bit on fire. So there's a lot on small business owners' minds. Yeah. They're reporting our highest rating of inflation being their top concern. So we have 26% of our owners reporting that is their number one concern with running their business. Yeah, and
it wasn't too long ago that talent and human resources were top of the list. I don't think that problem it may have subsided somewhat, but it hasn't gone away.
Hasn't gone away. It's ranked second, directly behind inflation. So we've got 26% of owners reporting inflation, 22% reporting labor quality being their second most important part.
So from the business person's perspective, and talking about your members, the independent small business, Dawn, is inflation a problem in the context of the cost of inputs in operating their business, or in the context of concern about consumer sentiment and consumers' willingness to spend their money, or just how far their dollars will go and how that might affect them financially, or perhaps a combination of the two?
I think that's probably right. The issue is that, at the end of last year, we saw a real buildup in inventory for small business owners, depending on their segment, obviously, but they were building up inventory. They were kind of housing that. Now you don't see them kind of reaching out to get more inventory. So that's a negative, because you want them to continually be getting inventory in. And then the other side of that is the price increases. So we have 68% of owners telling us they are having to increase their prices, and that's a highest reading for us in this optimism survey. So when you have that many owners telling you that, that's a piece of it. And then you have another 60% of owners telling us that they see opportunities lost in sales. And so it's because they can't get whatever they were having, or, all the things with the supply chain that still have, are not still that leading issue, but have fallen behind a little bit, but are still there. So there's all of those factors kind of playing into what's happening right now in the economy for them.
Dawn, have you sought any feedback with respect to sentiment from your members? Is just to the outlook and the future. You got the headwinds of still have a talent shortage. You got inflation is a consideration. You got supply chain. They can't get stuff to sell, or stuff they need to make goods and services, as the case may be. These are all got to be top concerns, which they are across the country. What are they telling you?
Well, they're telling us that, especially with this labor quality issue, and particularly in the wholesale and manufacturing and transportation industries and those segments, because they require skilled workers, particularly there, they're really the optimism is just down, and that's the net effect of what the survey ends up telling us. But they don't see it improving in the coming 3 or 6 months. And so and then on top of the, all the headwinds, as you mentioned, and then the labor quality piece, especially in some segments of the economy, those are important segments that we need folks working in. And so, it's not looking great for the outlook right now.
So what are these business owners, what are they doing to mitigate these pressures, these issues?
Yeah, they're just trying to, they're trying to keep their doors open and trying to keep their employees that they have. We always talk about hiring. Our folks want to keep the folks that they have. So we have seen over the past 3 to 6 months, record highs of owners telling us they've increased wages, and they plan to increase wages still, because they know that that has a twofold effect. One, it helps them on the hiring side, and and then their retention goes up and the hiring goes down, because the hiring is the expensive piece for them because of the time and the cost it takes for a small business owner to put into that. So they want to get folks on board, get them trained, get them into the fold and keep them. And so that's what they're doing. They're using the funds that they have and keeping their doors open. Consumer spending has been still good. It's just that at some point, when is inflation going to finally hit to where, and those price increases hit to where people aren't going to spend anymore? And I think as we look at gas prices, we're starting to see that. Yeah,
absolutely. I have seen some reports recently that suggest that maybe these spikes in wages to get people to come to work are starting to plateau a little bit. You hearing that?
Yeah, they are. There's not as many reporting that they are raising wages as opposed to how kind of that going into the end of last year, that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But we still see I think it was about 26% of owners reported that they plan to raise wages in the coming 3 months.
Okay.
So that's still a nice, I think that's down from about 30% previously, but it's good. It's still good. And I think that it is plateauing because, again, you have the labor quality issue you're contending with. So those things do go hand in hand.
You guys ever done any analysis on just the pay scale and the range of pay for workers that work for your members? And the reason I ask that is this debate in this country about raising the minimum wage. I'm not sure anybody's paying the minimum wage.
No, one of the biggest arguments on our end of that is let the market set the wages, let the market, because you have a small business owner in one area of Mississippi who's going to pay a lot differently than that small business owner in Oxford or in Jackson, okay, or in the Gulf Coast, so we know that the state is laid out differently and there's going to be different metrics. So one size does not fit all. So that's why we oppose increases to the minimum wage, because that's ultimately just a one size fits all. Here's a new labor cost that you have to pay for, and you have to make your bottom line work with it. And how does that make any sense, especially with what we're dealing with right now?
Last report I saw from the federal government, it's like 1.9% of the workers in this country make minimum wage. Yet they put that at the top of the list as just widespread abuse of that, and I just don't think that's the case. All right, so I know you represent Mississippi and Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a very hotly contested issue in this state that affects your members, and that's tax reform legislation. What is you guys' position on that?
Well, we got a little bit more involved than we typically get involved last week when we launched an ad campaign in support of doing something. Okay. Our position is this: we don't want to do the legislature's job for them. They were elected to go out there and make the tough decisions. Yep. Figure out what is best for the state. But don't leave here this session without doing anything for the people. It would just be wrong.
Okay.
And that's where we are. We certainly support the Speaker's bill. We certainly support the Senator Harkin's bill. The issue is that when we ask our members how they feel about things, what we do is go out to our members statewide and say, this is what's going to be discussed in the session. We're not sure quite how it's going to look because, as you know, it was one version last year. Nothing moved. And so we knew there were a lot of conversations over the interim. And we said, well, it could be elimination, could be a reduction. How do y'all feel? 78% of our members told us they want to see something done. Okay. And so that tells us that's a big number, And so what we said was, how do we get involved, and how do we let people know that, this is a big issue for the state, and it has a big impact on small business owners. Because most file as individuals.
That's right. Pass through.
Yep. So that's why a lot of people are like, well, why do y'all care about this? Well, that's why. Yeah. Because small business owners are your individuals who are running your businesses here in Mississippi. Yeah. We're halfway through a phase out of corporate franchise tax in the state, which is great.
Dumbest tax ever.
Right. So let's do something for the little guy.
Okay. Well, anxious to hear your position on that and appreciate that, and we'll see what happens. We want to see something get done as well, and we are talking to both the House and the Senate about coming together and get something done. Yes. Let's hope we do that.
Let's come together and get something done.
Appreciate you joining us today, Dawn McVea, the National Federation of Independent Small Business. She's the Mississippi and Louisiana Director. And thanks for being in the studio. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back on Middays from the Element Well Studio. Stay with us.